Welcome to the Great Canadian Leadership Podcast, proudly brought to you by the Great Canadian Training and Consulting Company. Thank you for joining us today in our search for what makes a great communicator. I'm your host, Joel Silverstone, and every episode we'll be speaking with leaders and experts on how they were able to use their communication skills to inspire, create trust, collaboration, and influence others all in a respectful manner. How did they do it? What did they do to get better? How did they adapt? Where did they fail? Listeners and viewers, if you are looking to improve your communication skills and take those steps to being the next great leader in business, you're in the right place. Enjoy the podcast. How can we communicate successfully in meetings with clients or with our colleagues? What about if you're longtime friends and you decide, hey, let's start a business? Well, how would you make that work? And what communication skills would you need to be effective and maintain respect and grow the business? In this episode, our guests, Maislin and Marko Lindhe, have figured out a way to operationalize their communication styles with each other, their clients, and their roster of 130 plus remote contract workers. And they've been involved in over 20,000 meetings. So we're going to be finding out what are the key factors here that make meetings successful and those that are not so much, like those that lead to just another meeting. Maislin and Marko Lindhe are those longtime friends who co-founded in 2014 Minute Solutions, which specializes in professional minute taking and transcription for meetings and improved communication across a variety of industries. Maislin was born with entrepreneurship in his blood. His father, grandfathers, and even great-grandfather were all entrepreneurs. And Marko Lindhe, he has a background in med tech and logistics. And Marko is always looking for ways to improve efficiencies within his respective companies and found that entrepreneurial life was better suited for him. Love this quote from the episode you're about to listen to. Without solid communication, you don't have much of a business. This is an insightful episode on leadership, meetings, business partnerships, and the communication skills needed to be successful. Let's meet Maislin and Marko Lindhe. All right, we've got Noah and Marko. Thank you so much for being on the Great Canadian Leadership Podcast today.
Thanks for having us.
Good afternoon.
Absolutely. This is great. We're going to be talking about good meeting, bad meetings. I mean, you guys have been doing this for a long time. You've sat in on a lot of meetings. You operate a staff of, well over 100 who have sat in on meetings. So we're going to get that insight into what makes a good meeting, a bad meeting. We're also going to talk as two people running this company, how you are communicating with each other and how you're communicating to the staff that is, I guess, across North America. And we're going to, of course, talk about that failure ta-da moment in your career. How does that sound as an agenda for today, guys?
Perfect.
Real good. Let's do it.
All right, good. I passed the first test. I said a good agenda. All right, perfect, great. Let's talk a bit about Minute Solutions. And what's interesting about your company is that you've been running remote business long before we even knew what the word remote meant.
Before it was trendy.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Before it was trending. That's right. Hashtag remote. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, so Marko and I started our business in 2014, and we kind of always knew we wanted to run a remote business, mainly because we didn't have a lot of money when we were starting out, and we didn't want the overhead of an office and carrying that cost. So kind of looked at it and we said, hey, can we run this business without an office, at least to start? I think Marko was always pushing to get the office, and I was always
a little bit, yeah.
Keep our costs as lean as possible. And in 2014, we just kind of launched it. And thankfully enough, we're in an industry where the majority of the work is done virtually or off-site. And we had a look, and we looked at the industry, and we said, what can we do? How can we help this industry with keeping things as virtual as possible? And that's kind of when we started in 2014 with those goals and aspirations.
So this has worked out well for you that meetings are remote now, because I guess with, I think you have 130, 140 minute takers, meeting takers, and now I guess it's easy to move people around to be at meetings pretty fast.
Yeah, correct. I think initially my desire to have an office wasn't to have minute takers there, but for me it was to have a centralized sort of location where no one I could go to work more than anything. And we figured out how to do it from our condos, and it was kind of the plan A until we grew to a point where we could get an office. And then, Noah being the money guy, he's like, let's just be lean, let's just stay lean. And then eventually we got to a point where I definitely realized the convenience of working remotely. There were some challenges early on, and there are, but as you mentioned now, most of our meetings happen virtually, which is good because it allows us to scale better. We can work with clients all over the world, predominantly over Canada and US, but the hubs span all over both countries. So now we can send minute takers. We don't have to have local minute takers. We can send minute takers essentially who are very skill specific to clients who are industry specific and match them up, even though they're not located next door. You can have somebody from the west coast of Canada dialing into a meeting on the eastern seaboard of the US, and their skill sets might match up specifically with that industry, and they're allowed to, they can essentially attend that. And it's made scaling easier, and it's also made hiring a little bit easier, taking away the transportation necessities as well.
Makes total sense. I think that's probably the biggest advantage of this whole remote is people can, like you said, with certain skill sets can now, there's no cost for travel. You can get your best minute taker who's maybe on the West Coast to because their skill set might be in the financial industry. They understand what's going on with somebody on the Eastern Seaboard.
Yeah, brilliant. It also opens up the hiring for us. I mean, like Marko said previously, let's say for a lot of our clients are in the GTA, so we'd have to hire people who live within the GTA or around the GTA. So, we're getting resumes from all over across Canada into the US, and our hiring manager, Christine, would look at them and she said, this person is amazing, but, they live 2,000 kilometers away. So now it really opens up the playing field for us in terms of hiring, where we could pretty much hire anybody anywhere in the world.
Great. Well, as we're talking about the business, it makes me think, you're in the communication business. So, our show is always about how our learners and listeners here can learn more about communication styles, especially from leadership. Both of you are leading this organization. So, Noah, maybe let's start with you. And here's the question, what does communication mean to you?
It's a good question, considering we're on the topic of communication.
Very abstract.
Communication means a lot to me. To me, it's really the focal point of operating a business. I mean, without solid communication, then you really don't have much of a business. And there's so many elements wrapped into communication. It's communicating with your staff. It's communicating with your clients. It's communicating with prospective clients. So I really look at it as the focal point of any business that you look at, any successful business that you look at today. I mean, just look at the communication that they have internally with their staff. Chances are, all the major corporations have, decently happy staff. I mean, it depends which company you look at, but the way that they are able to articulate to their staff, enables them to grow. I mean, once you grow your skill set and your staff base, then you're able to grow your clientele. And then tying in communication with your clientele is you need to articulate to your clientele your message, what you do, what you're selling, why you're better than the competitor. So all of that is under the umbrella of great and strong communication.
Those are great points. I'm going to come back to some of those because there's a lot of good things in there. I have a couple more questions on that. But Marko, let's go. And now, Marko, let's go to you. Same question.
Marko here with the weather. It is a really loaded question, and ultimately it's funny because communication, I think, is something that I've always struggled with. Sometimes the thing is that people receive messages differently. Something I've always admired. Not always. Something I newly admire about Noah that at first we kind of struggled with is he's very direct. And I think a lot of people appreciate that, where sometimes his directness to me sounded a little bit crass. And I'd be like, let's fluff it up a little bit. Let's fluff it up a little bit. But what happened is that sometimes the message gets lost in the fluff. And I thought I was a better communicator because I was like, I'm directing this message to this person and not knowing how they receive communication. And as I get, older, a little bit wiser, a little bit more, more gray hairs, I realize that directness is so appreciated because you know where you stand with that person, right? So that's something that I've learned to appreciate. It doesn't come naturally to me, so I'm learning how to do it. But just to tie into something now when I'm speaking with employees specifically or partners, I use the acronym PRAISE, and it's pause, repeat, acknowledge, inform, and inform, suggest, and execute. I had to write it down so I didn't screw it up.
Okay.
But just to give you a quick example, if you're talking to an employee who feels like they're working too hard because they're understaffed. So first they tell you that and you pause. So it's, I'm listening to you, I'm hearing you, I'm not interrupting you. Then it's repeating what they're saying. So what you're saying is you're overworked because we're understaffed and you need support. Yes. So you acknowledge that. I understand we're busy. I understand you need support, and make them feel heard. And then you inform them. So we're actually in the process of hiring. It takes longer than we think. We're getting you as much support as we can, but there's a process. And then you make a suggestion. So since this person's going to be working directly with you, how about you join the next couple of interviews? So you have a say in who we hire. You're going to be training them, so then they can come into your team and you'll feel comfortable, and then execute. And then the execution part is, let's do it. We're working together. We're a team. We're doing this to be better for both of us. So it's something that I repeat to myself over and over again, but it has helped a lot with communicating internally with staff.
No, I'm going to give you, Marko, I'm going to give you some praise on that. That is really, really, you nailed what communication is how are they going to receive it? And it's a balance of the fluff and the directness. But what I really like is that you speak to the emotions first by, pausing, which is making sure they're finished speaking, or, people don't want answers right away. They want to know that they've been heard first, and then they're going to be open to the answers. So it's, neuroscience has said that people react to things first emotionally and then use logic to substantiate it afterwards. And that's exactly what that praise is doing, is they're going to be more open to your suggestion if they felt acknowledged.
Yeah, absolutely.
Noah, thoughts on the praise model?
Absolutely. I just wish you would share that with you would have shared that with me earlier. It was the first time I heard you speak of that.
It wasn't an acronym until we realized we were going to be guests, and I was like, let's actually make it sound like an acronym. And I took all the components of it. I was like, that actually sounds pretty good. Like, I'm going to use that.
It is something that we both definitely use on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
I just never heard the acronym part of it before. So send me your note on that after so I could put it up on the whiteboard here.
There you go. You just made communications into logistics and operations.
You, Joel, you're all to thank for this one.
Well, so this is great. I'm glad we did that. Now let's talk about you guys have hinted about working with each other since the beginning. How do you communicate with each other? Like our listeners probably want to know. How does this work when it's a small company? In sense that it's the two of you basically running with a lot of people, but how do you maintain dealing with conflict with each other, maybe difference of opinions with each other?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think Marko and I are very fortunate that we have a very strong working relationship. He has all the qualities I don't, and I have some of the qualities that he doesn't, and together that's why we make a very strong partnership. And I think when we started very early on, we were never two people to sit at the table and yell at each other. We are two people that will sit at the table and articulate to each other and hear each other out, and essentially debate and have a healthy debate on, if I think something's right and he thinks it's wrong, we'll debate about the point. And essentially until one person gets exhausted, that's when we know who the winner is, right? But there's some things that I feel super, super strong in. And, we're lucky enough that we each have the intuition when it comes to each other, that he could tell when I'm super passionate about something. And if he's not as passionate about it, then, we'll go my way on that, and vice versa. Same thing with him. When I could tell that he's super passionate and he 100% believes in something, and if I'm at only a 99% belief in it, then we'll go with his way. And if we really, to be completely honest, I don't think there has been a situation where we just have not been able to come to a conclusion. If anything, there's been a situation where we said, okay, let's try your way for a week. We'll see how it goes. We'll try my way for a week. We'll see how it goes. And then we'll figure out the plan from there. But I think we're just very fortunate because we also keep the lines of communication open with each other. We speak, hourly on Slack. So Slack's a really important part of our company, but we also have a 1 hour call scheduled for him and I only. We have other calls scheduled throughout the week with other members of our team, but every Tuesday at 2:00, it's 1 hour, just him and I. And sometimes we don't even have anything to talk about in regards to business. So sometimes, we're literally just talking about how much better the Leafs are than the Canadians, or we're talking about the latest restaurant he went to. But
I put those on mute.
Yeah. But I said, no matter what, we've said this for years, no matter what, even if we have nothing to talk about, even if it's just a, hey, how are you? How's your week going? Every Tuesday, 2:00, we're on the phone, no matter what.
My jaw's dropped because this is so good as to how to deal. There's so much gold in there, Noah and Marko, and how you guys deal with it. One is, and I'll give you another acronym from what I'm hearing. The acronym is Q-tip. Quit taking it personally.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you have a lot of respect for each other, that when you're talking to each other or sharing opinions or thoughts, that neither of you are taking it personally. Like, you respect each other.
Yeah, we do. And like I said, it's not to say that we don't have emotional conversations, and there have been topics where Noah and I are both passionate about it. That does come with that context of being emotional and wanting it our way. But like I said, we're always open to capitulating, and there always is that iota where one person is a little bit more passionate, and some conversations do take longer to get there, but eventually, like Noah said, we'll compromise, capitulate. Sure, let's try it your way, and then we'll see where it goes from there, which is excellent. And it's strong in terms of our communication. What I really appreciate with those Tuesday calls that Noah mentioned as well is it just adds structure to our communication lines. So when you're a startup and you're in this entrepreneurial world where you're on an absolute grind, you're texting each other at 2 a.m, emailing each other, responding, calling that person. And there is a lot of charm to that when you're starting a business, but eventually now we know that we're both respectively busy. We have more structure. We have a team. So it's like, that question that I have on Thursday that can wait a couple days, I don't need to text you and not centralize it. I'm going to write it down. Mm-hmm. And then we have that structured call. And on Tuesday, we'll be like, okay, what do you have to go through today? And bang, 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 this is what I have. Bang, 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 this is what I have. And if it's urgent, we can call each other whenever we need to or Slack each other, but it adds structure to that dialogue, which I actually think mitigates some of that temperament as well. So not everything is a conversation. Once you have a list, much like an agenda at a meeting, you know what's on the table and you know what you need to solve. And I think that helps dramatically as well.
I think there's some good points in there. Also, I think as an organization, you really need to understand. Every organization is going to be a little bit different. Our issues are different than another company's issues, but you really need to understand: is this an email? Is this a Slack? Is this a phone call? Is this a face-to-face meeting? Yes. There are some things throughout the day where I could send him a Slack or a text, and he'll know that I need an answer on that right away. And that's obviously important. And it's usually a quick thing. Yes, no, the meeting's at 4, whatever it may be. Right. But there's things that aren't as urgent. And those things will either be saved for our call, or, if we have a face-to-face meeting coming up, we understand some things are for the call, some things are for face-to-face, and some things are for Slack and for email. So again, every organization is going to be different of how they prioritize that. But I think it's really important to understand what sort of issues fall into what category.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing to mention too is Noah and I are lucky as well in the sense that we were friends before we were partners, and there's a lot of horror stories when that doesn't work out well, but for us it worked out really well. And I think the fact that we're really different, somebody very early on in our relationship and our business told us that we have a higher chance of success because we're so different. They were like, if you were the same person, there'd be no reason for you to partner. So as Noah mentioned, he brings everything to the table that I'm missing, and that helps. And sometimes that again, going back to communication, sometimes the communication we struggle with a little bit when we're trying to get that message across. But once I see it from his perspective and he sees it from mine, and then having that foundation of our relationship, I've known him since I was 10, 11. So like we were teammates and friends before we were business partners. So that all ties into it. And overall, it definitely reflects in our relationship, and it reflects in how we communicate with one another. And the trust that we have for each other as well, right? We can talk openly, and Q-tip, we try not to take it personally, but being friends, we can get there pretty quickly.
Right. But as you said, it could be a horror story when it's friends. But somehow, as you said, you with your background in operation logistics, you've kind of figured this out as to how to do it that way.
Yeah.
Let's do this. We're going to take a little break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about again, two of you have sat in on hundreds of meetings, plus you have hundreds of people working for you who sat in on hundreds of meetings. So what makes a good meeting work well, and why do meetings go badly? We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about the failure to moment. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Joy Newhold, and we'll be right back to our interview. When I started the Great Canadian Training and Consulting Company in 2002, I never would have imagined that one day we would have a podcast. So first, I want to thank you for listening and share some really exciting information about our organization with you. For years, we have made our live instructor-led software and soft skills training, consulting, and coaching services customizable to meet the unique needs of each client and committed ourselves to a high quality of customer service. This combined to make the learning experience better for the participants and the planning process easier for the organizer. We love helping our clients so much. We also develop many additional free resources to help you along the way, and this podcast is just one of them. At greatcanadiantraining.ca, you will find our free monthly webinars, blog articles, and free downloads covering everything from building better dashboards in Excel to navigating difficult conversations and everything in between. So make sure to join us at greatcanadiantraining.ca. But for now, I better let you get back to the podcast. Please enjoy the rest of the interview.
All right, welcome back. This has been great. I love that praise model. I love the way you guys are talking about how you've communicated with each other and so proactive about setting up meetings with each other, and that's there. Now let's talk about structure. Let's talk about good meetings, bad meetings. So let's start with the positive. Let's start about, what do you think are a couple of key steps for people to have good meetings?
Yeah, I'll preface this conversation, then I'll let Marko take it. But so as you know, we do professional minute taking for board meetings primarily. So because of the nature of our business, we are involved with, since our inception, we've been involved with over 20,000 meetings. At the beginning, it was Marko and I sitting in and a lot of the meetings, if not all of the meetings. And then as we grew, we've developed our staff, and now it's our staff who are sitting in and taking the minutes of the meeting. So we are privy to a lot of private and sensitive information that goes on at meetings.
Right.
We're also privy to watching things unfold at meetings. So we really do have a strong understanding of what makes a successful meeting and what makes an unsuccessful meeting. And I'll let Marko, lead in. I'll take that question and just talk about, the successes, how it turns in from the agenda to the chair and all that type of thing.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect.
In terms of technicalities, there are a couple of things that go into the meeting. Noah and I have seen a lot of meetings where the board isn't harmonious, and sometimes they reach out to us specifically because they find that a group that's particularly bellicose or has somebody that's outspoken and a little bit potentially even rude, because there's a lot of emotions at the table, that having an objective third-party minute taker will placate them a little bit, if you will. So it'll calm them down, knowing that now there's somebody in the room who's entirely objective and taking the minutes. We don't write the things down that they're saying verbatim, and ultimately our job is to protect the board and make sure that the things that are written down is what's pertinent to the meeting and the next steps. But essentially not all people who are meeting are friends. Oftentimes we're called specifically because they're not, but we find that even in those meetings, they can have success as long as they're planned. So you're not undermining anyone. I'm not planning a meeting with Noah and someone else and leaving Joel out of it because I know he's going to go against me, and essentially I'll get my point across without him being there. So a good meeting is inclusive. It's making sure that everybody is invited. Everybody who needs to be there is there. It has a purpose, so there's a desired outcome. So that can be put into the agenda as well. So, an analogy I use is painting the lobby. So we go into a meeting and we have an agenda and it says, okay, let's paint the lobby, something as simple as that. We have our own opinions. We have our own favorite colors. What we're talking about, what everybody talks about, doesn't get put into the minutes, but essentially the outcome will. So there was a discussion on what color to paint the lobby. It leaves out the individual preferences that don't serve a purpose to the minutes, and then the outcome. And if there's a vote, a motion, you include that all. So you want a desired outcome before the meeting. And then the third thing to me is a good chair. So you need a chairperson. It's essentially a referee at the meeting. If you have a lot of big personalities, and you don't have somebody in control, if you have a weak chair, we call them, the meeting is going to go all over directions. It's going to be difficult for the minute taker. It's going to be difficult to read the minutes because they're following all sorts of different trajectories. So ultimately they're inclusive, they have a desired outcome, and they have a strong chair who can be like, okay, it's enough. And the nice thing about virtual meetings is there is a mute button now, so in case somebody gets carried away, that's more of a joke than anything, Joel, but
Right.
some clients being like, I want to use that mute button, but yeah, ultimately they're inclusive, there's a desired outcome and a strong chairperson.
Yeah, I know. I still haven't figured out how to play music over someone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're being escorted out. So it's a strong chairperson or the facilitator, in another type of meeting. And I guess obviously setting those ground rules also helps. So it empowers the chairperson or facilitator to be able to say, right, let's keep to you had 2 minutes. That was the 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like setting that agenda is also really important.
Correct.
So when we veer off, we know where we're going. And I think the most important thing is, why are we all here? It's that sense of purpose, which adds to the inclusiveness, why we're all here and what we're going to do with this.
I think in the corporate world, we've all been, there's that joke, don't make a meeting something that can be an email. I said it improperly, but, we've all said it on meetings where we're like, why did I just waste 90 minutes of my time sitting in that room where nothing happened? So I would say almost most importantly, it's having that desired outcome and making sure that meeting has a purpose and you're not wasting anyone's time.
It's not a meeting about having another meeting.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Let's go over now to bad meetings then, Noah. So what makes meetings unsuccessful? We got a taste of maybe some things that they could go wrong. Any other thoughts, Noah, about why meetings don't go well?
Pretty much just flip the script on what Marko just said. I mean, unorganized meetings that have no real point. There's no real leader to the meeting. Everybody's kind of throwing their thoughts into the middle of the table, and there's a lot of arguing and again, I mean, if you look at what makes a successful meeting, if you don't have those points, you're going to end up with a bad meeting. You need somebody to really drive the meeting. You need a person to drive the meeting, but you also need a document as well to drive the meeting in terms of an agenda saying, this is what we're going to cover. You could veer so far off course from topic. You could start talking about changing the painting in the hallway or whatever, and then you start talking about vacationing to Mexico. It just doesn't make any sense. So if you could always look back to either a person to tie things back together and bring things back to where they need to be, or that document, i.e. the agenda, and saying, okay, we veered a little bit off course. Let's go back. We're on subject 2 right now. Let's continue talking about subject 2. Then you should be on pace. Also, if you're getting into a meeting where it's going to be contentious beforehand, well, right off the bat, you have a very likelihood of your meeting becoming very difficult and very drawn out, very long. So again, the agenda and a meeting lead really helps with especially meetings that look like they're going to be a little bit more difficult because of the nature of the topic. The leader of the meeting, the chairperson or the manager or whatever the nature of your business is, having a centralized figure that everybody at the meeting can kind of look to really tie things back together and keep things within the box that they need to be kept in for that meeting.
Yeah, it sounds like the chairperson or facilitator of that meeting is pivotal to a successful meeting. As much as we want to believe that we're all adults and we can speak.
Most of us aren't, actually.
Right. Yeah. Okay, well, this is great. So thank you for sharing that. That's some key points about what makes it successful. And I'm just wondering one final note, and Marko, you kind of mentioned this, with having that minute taker there, do you think people are a bit more on better behavior because all of a sudden there's that third party that's in the room?
Yeah, we've heard that. We've definitely heard that. I think every board is different, but sometimes you can get a little bit too comfortable. And I think from the feedback that I've gotten from some boards that really experience a lot of disharmony because, of 1, 2, or multiple personalities, having that objective third party, there, whether it's virtually or knowing that those minutes are good, knowing that the meeting, whether it's a recording or happening in person, that there is going to be, and what we do isn't a transcript, but that there's going to be what was said essentially articulated into what needs to be done. I certainly think it does come with a component of making something feel a little bit more official, and people tend to be better behaved when things are official. So yeah, I definitely think it plays a role.
That's good insight. All right, let's go to our final segment, which we like to call failure. Ta-da! And so, Marko, Noah, this is from the world of improvisation, where we celebrate failures. So I'm gonna ask you guys to share a failure moment, something during your career or in business interactions where there was a failure, what felt like a failure at the time, but it was actually a real learning point. And I'll ask you to share it, and we'll celebrate it. And at the end, if you want to say "ta-da," feel free to do so.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
Noah, go ahead.
I find the word failure to be very interesting, and it's definitely a word that I try not to use often at all. If you're in a situation and it doesn't work out successful or in the way that you want to work out, I always try and take a lesson from it. And to me, if I could draw a lesson from a situation that was not successful, then I just don't call that a failure. It might have been something that didn't work out, or it wasn't the outcome you wanted. But I very seldomly use the word failure, as long as you could draw a lesson from that and apply that lesson to your next venture or your next idea or whatever it is, whatever's next in your process. But for us, very early on, we had a classic entrepreneurial issue when we first started out. We were growing too quickly. And before, like right when we started our business, before I had any clients, just like any entrepreneur, yes, let's get in clients, as many clients as possible. Take 1 million, we'll take all of them. The only way to be successful is have the most clients ever, right? And you do everything you do to drive as much business as possible. So we were obviously working under that mindset because we're just normal, regular entrepreneurs. And it failed us. It failed us pretty big at the beginning, as much as I don't like to use the word failed. So we actually stopped for about 6 months, and we put our sales initiatives on a complete hold. We didn't do any sales whatsoever for about 6 months. And this was about 12 months into starting our business. And Marko and I looked at it, we said, what are the issues right now? Because the reason why we stopped it completely is because our attrition rate from new clients was pretty big. We were losing about 20 to 25% of the new clients that were coming in. And we kind of said, hey, like, what is going on here? Are we running a crappy business? Are we running a service that people actually don't like? Are we failing? Are we not doing a good job? So we took a week and we scanned our entire business and we really looked at things, and it boiled down to our hiring and training process. So when we looked at it, we said, for the most part, it's very difficult for us to find staff to facilitate meetings. So some meetings we can't even find staff to facilitate for. Other meetings we're finding staff super last minute and the staff are going in unprepared. And then on top of that, we took a look at our staff and we said, well, how good are our staff at completing the job? So once we took a look at all that, we realized our hiring process wasn't great. Our training process wasn't great. And our process to retain staff also wasn't great because we were losing a lot of staff as well. So Marko and I spent about 6 months really looking at things and really honing in things and putting processes in place. And to tie these processes into communication, as you mentioned before, our company was remote from day one. So it's not like we could bring everybody into a boardroom and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how you're going to get trained. You're going to be in this classroom for the next week, getting trained on our processes, on how to do things and how to become professional mint takers. Our company was remote. So we had to figure out how to do all of this through virtual means. So not only did we have to perfect the mechanism and our process of hiring and retaining, but we also had to perfect the mechanism of training our staff all virtually. So we really dug in. We became absolute experts at our craft. Marko and I became the best minute takers you possibly could become. We did all the training, all the outside training. We really studied the craft to really understand the industry and what makes the best and what differentiates the best from the rest of the pack. And then what we did was we took a lot of time to say, okay, we have this knowledge, but how do we communicate it and how do we articulate it through virtual means? Do we need to put together videos? Do we need to put together online webinars? Do we need to put together a manual? What is it that's going to make us successful to articulate our process and our skill set to our new hires? So again, I wouldn't say we failed at the beginning. We took a bit of a kick at losing a lot of our clients and obviously having our revenue dwindle. But to us, we honed it in over a span of 6 months to really figure out how to perfect this. And I use the word perfect loosely because it's always evolving. It's always changing. Even, today we're still changing our process. We're always trying to improve. We're always trying to get better. But what did we do in 2000? I guess it was 2015 we did this. What did we do and what did we learn and how did we figure out a new process forward to be able to continue to grow our company and not have such a high attrition rate?
I'm pausing. I'm putting praise in the place. I'm pausing in case Marko wanted to say something.
I did. I think Noah said it all, though. It's yeah, I don't have anything to add to that. I remember it well, and I'm just kind of flashing back to a lot of those conversations, and that's it.
Well, this is great. Thank you. This is a nice tie-in as to, how you are also communicating with each other, which is, it can always be better. It took a lot of courage to say pause, and we got all these sales coming in and take a pause and go, no, we can be better. We need to be better. And how do we communicate what's in our mind and what's in our heads and what's in our hearts? But how do we communicate to make sure that everybody feels that they're also on board and we're all speaking the same language?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And like that whole experience was us communicating not only with each other, but understanding it and then having to communicate what we learned, which was a long process. And there definitely is an art and a science to good minute taking. It's, not an industry I ever thought I'd end up in. I didn't even know it was an industry really until Noah and I started this company, and we are in a sense pioneers of it in terms of how fast we've grown and how big we've become. But I genuinely feel that that we've done it the right way. We were boots on the ground, like we bootstrapped this business from day one. We knocked on doors, sold the idea and then had to pivot along the way, and it's always evolving. Yeah. Like Noah said, we never sit there and are like, we did it. We're doing it, we're doing it and we're learning as we go.
Well, it's like those Tuesday meetings at 2:00. It's like, you have this checklist. What do we need to do to keep being better?
Correct.
So I think that's a great lesson for everyone in business, and everyone in communication too. What can I do to make sure that the person receiving my message, that we're speaking the same language? So I love that. Noah and Marko, this has been great. We learned about good meetings, bad meetings, how to communicate with each other. We learned a new model, trademarked by Marko, Praise, which is great to stand by. And so our listeners would probably love to know, how can they learn more about Noah and Marko or the Minute Solution? So where can we go to find out more?
Sure. Our site is minutesolutions.com. Minutes is plural and solutions is also plural. It's a bit of a difficulty when we're explaining
that to clients. Yeah.
Well, telling clients their emails, they always forget an S somewhere along the way. And your listeners can also contact us directly if they have any questions, comments, feedback, or they want to learn a little bit more about communication or minute taking. My email is noah@minutesolutions.com. Marko is marko@minutesolutions.com. And
find us on LinkedIn as well.
And on LinkedIn, yeah. Anything we could do to help your listeners, guys, feel free to reach out to us.
Perfect. That would be really helpful. And I took a look at your website and I see there's some great blogs there too, which is some great resources. So definitely worth checking out. Noah and Marko, thank you so much for your time on the Great Canadian Leadership Podcast, and to more success and more successful meetings at 2:00.
Thank you, Joel.
That was a lot of fun. Really appreciate it.
And now it's time for our 3 stars, nos 3 étoiles. These are the 3 takeaways from today's episode that you can start to put into practice. Number 1, we've got a communication acronym from today, and it's PRAISE. Pause, repeat, acknowledge, inform, execute. Our takeaway from that is you want the other person to feel heard and understood before you make a request. Number 2, Tuesday meeting. Commitment to communicate. No matter the size of your organization, knowing that there is a weekly meeting to share thoughts, ideas, even if you think there's nothing to say, you're keeping those lines of communication open. Number 3, the keys to a successful meeting is agenda, inclusive, outcome, and the chairperson. Set the expectations with that agenda. Invite all that should be there, and make sure you have an outcome, not just another meeting. And ideally, someone needs to be the referee. So, what's the next step? Well, if you're not sure where you can apply these 3 stars in business or maybe even in life, try this. Drop your ego. If in the next few days there's an opportunity to make something better, your organization, a process, maybe yourself, then drop your ego. Look at the idea or the process without taking it personally. Enjoy. Thank you for joining us in our search for what makes a great communicator. If you enjoyed the show, then please leave a rating or review. Even better, subscribe to the Great Canadian Leadership Podcast and make sure you don't miss another episode. Let's stay connected. Follow us on Twitter or Instagram at GCT_Compues. And if you'd like more information, free resources, or class schedules on everything from software to soft skills training, consulting, or coaching, then go on over to greatcanadiantraining.ca. Thank you, and we will see you next episode.